we have a whole narrative about the importance of education. And for a large and growing number of kids, that narrative is now a myth and an unproductive and unhelpful one. And these are the kids who are low income and disproportionately minority. These are the kids who start school so far behind that it's unlikely they will catch up. These are the kids who miss so many days of school and so much instruction that it won't matter if there's a good school with a quality teacher in every classroom with a rigorous curriculum keyed to great standards. The kids aren't there to benefit from it. And these are the kids who every summer return to school having lost ground. And so when they return in September, they're farther behind than when they left in June. Now, any one of these, starting out behind, falling farther behind, or losing ground, would be sufficient. There would be a problem. But in some children, in some families, in some neighborhoods, these three combine. And the child who starts out behind falls farther behind and loses ground. And for that kid, it is game over. What we're recognizing is that this group of kids will need a system of services, care, and support that will have sets of interventions that are 24/7, 365, two generation. 24/7, 365, two generation. And as soon as we recognize that, we recognize that this school-centric view of ours has to evolve and has to migrate to a more inclusive platform for the young children who are most in trouble. And that platform will have to start literally as well as figuratively where the kids are, where the most vulnerable kids are. So it means we've got to imagine a platform that begins with public housing and public schools. We have to look at the data and realize that the kids who aren't ready, the kids who aren't showing up, and the kids who are not taken care of over the summer reflect what we're beginning to call the health determinants of early school success. These kids are unhealthy in too many ways to count. We need to begin to say that rather than the squabbling over kindergarten readiness assessments, we all will commit to making sure that fewer kids show up to kindergarten with physical ailments, developmental delays, socio-emotional challenge, vision, hearing problems. We should commit to that and not allow over half the kids to show up with some sort of impediment which will affect their learning. We should recognize that the kids who are absent from school, a large portion of those absences are about asthma, a large portion of those absences are about tooth pain. And we should plan to do something about that. And we should realize that it is criminal that every community in this country will leave money on the table this summer, as they did last summer, as they did the summer before. Because as a matter of public policy, we've identified kids who need and deserve nutrition support. And we have the money to provide that support, but very few communities have figured out how to organize themselves to feed these kids when schools close. And I'm a lawyer, so I don't use criminal indiscriminately. I use it intentionally. We should be ashamed of ourselves that we leave money on the table that is intended to feed kids simply because we are too busy to figure out how to organize our communities to do that. And I've got to acknowledge here, that across the country, libraries and some museums, but I know more about the libraries, that have stepped up and taken on this issue of feeding children. It is a remarkable phenomenon. When the story of this era is told, people are going to say that libraries essentially had a choice to make and chose kids over history. And too few institutions are doing that today, and too many institutions are hanging on to their integrity of place and their old-fashioned rules that we are not allowing kids to be fed, even though we have the money. So when we think of this new platform and we begin with public housing and public schools and public health, we need to add libraries and museums to that platform. And there's probably some old-time sociology majors in the room. And as one, I will say, remember when we talked about third places? Libraries and museums are the quintessential third places. These are the places where people go because they want to, not because they have to. These are two-generation third places. This is the space that you occupy. And so when we think of that platform of public health, public schools, and public housing, we've got to think of libraries and museums as in part the social glue for that platform. What you bring to that platform, nobody else can bring. And you've got to figure out, as libraries and museums, how you essentially use this leverage, this incredible asset of being this place where people want to be, the place where they want to go even when they're not required, how you use this wonderful asset that you have to work with, organize, coordinate, create new relationships with the agencies that we need if we're going to have 24/7, 365, two-generation platforms for children. When we look at the numbers, libraries and museums have an attendance gap, a participation gap that echoes the achievement gap. When you look at your attendance overall, you find that there's at least a 20-point gap between the participation of the lowest income kids and the participation of other kids. That is a gap that you should find unacceptable. And since you know I love you, you know that this is a critique that's offered with love. You should find that unacceptable. And what we have learned is that success means putting a stake in the ground around something that's measurable. So the challenge for libraries and museums going forward is to close that gap, to make sure that the kids who need you most don't get you least. That is your challenge, and it's the same challenge we have with the achievement gap. So it means that that stake in the ground should have a number on it. about closing that gap, how much, and by when. And it means that you might have to reach out to low-income kids. You might have to reach out to kids who are in homeless shelters. You might have to do more to reach out to kids whose parents are incarcerated, whose parents are just in a reentry program. You might have to do more to reach out to kids who are in fact struggling readers and who are marginal readers. You might have to figure out, how are we going to get these kids who are not now coming here in great numbers in here? And you know, as you do that, you're going to have to do what only you can do, and that's work with the parents. We have got to get to the point where we say that we are not going to change the trajectory of the most vulnerable kids if we jettison their parents. So some of us have to step up, raise our hands and say, we're in the parent business. And there's no reason why libraries can't be the 211, 311, 411, 511 for parents. And there's no reason why museums, and children's museums especially, cannot be more creative in figuring out how are we going to engage parents in the work so that the very parents whose kids we need most to reach will find that this is a third place that they want to come. This is work that some of you are already doing, and I applaud you for it. But the fact of the matter is we're not working on it hard enough, we're not working on it fast enough, and we're not making enough progress. We can do more. We can do better.